Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Anatomical Gangster, where I'm going to pull back the curtain on movement, fascia, and game changing concepts that redefine how we experience our own bodies. Today, I'm joined by the brilliant Ian O'Dwyer. I met him a number of years ago at an URSA conference, and I feel like I've met my brother from the other side of the planet. We are completely in sync in our philosophies and understanding of fascia. And if you haven't met Ian, he is quite unconventional in his approach to movement, emotions, and function, and how he creates these seamless experiences that are both intuitive and to me, groundbreaking. He is also the co-founder of Odon Movement and the director of Feel Soma. We're going to jam out about fascia and his viewpoints on how we move, heal, and connect. So if you are new to this podcast, subscribe below, share it with your friends, and I hope that you enjoy this conversation with Ian O'Dwyer. Ian, thank you so much for coming on Anatomical Gangster. I've been waiting for this. We've tried numerous times, and here we are together again. I'm super honored, and thank you for hanging out with me today.
So it's an absolute pleasure. And yes, it has been a challenge from all the way from Australia to the States, but it's okay. We've got there. And it's nice just to be able to talk to someone with a like mind. I just love it.
Yeah, well, for everybody listening, I met Ian at the URSA conference, and I literally thought I was talking to a male version of me who lived in Australia and has a much better accent than my New York. And I just loved hanging out with you. I love talking to you because you and I truly are. We're so in sync in how we view the human body. And I loved your story when you kind of shared a little bit just about the fact that you were a plumber at one point. And I just thought, of course, this is why you think this way. Not that I was a plumber at any point of my life,
Wow.
but,
I
but
reckon
this makes so much
you
sense.
may have been a plumber in a former life, sir. Who knows?
Very possible. So, Ian, I want to start a little bit here for you to share a little bit about not just the background of plumbing, but that you're in Australia. You are a movement educator. You've got Odon Movement. You have this Feel Soma company. Tell everybody just a little bit about the flavor of your practice and what you do.
Wow. Okay. That's a big bit. That's a big chunk of flavor. Um, Long story short, family of 8 boys and 1 girl. So dad was a horse person. He had a team of draft horses. So horses were big in our life. Um, you can imagine being a big family. We all played sport. Number 7 brother was a very, very good AFL footballer. Broke his neck a week after he was signed by a major club. Number 8 brother was born normally, had a triple antigen vaccination, lost portion of his brain, so he was intellectually disabled. And I come along at 3 years of age and decide to cut a piece of string upwards towards my eye, and the knife goes in and pulls my eye out. So the last 3 kids, Suze, in my family weren't that great. But the funny thing about that is, the aspiration to be the best I could be in my sporting field, because I was just so passionate about sport. Went through the sporting career. Of course, being from a large family, you needed to have a trade behind you, because back in those days, there was no education, there was no university. So my dad was very much, as my brothers were, very clever with their hands, very much practical thinkers. And coming from a horsing background, horses and humans have a very similar biological system and makeup. So fast forward, played sport, a lot of injuries, followed the strength and conditioning coaches like you wouldn't believe, did everything the physio said, did everything that the professionals told me to do. And I just kept breaking down with injuries, only to stop stretching later in my career and to find that the injuries stopped, only to learn that I was bendy rather than a stiff sort of footballer. And then go in, finish my plumbing career, and decide I want to be a personal trainer, which once I got that qualification, because that was my passion, right? My passion was movement, fitness, health, blah, blah, blah. But it really wasn't personal training. I soon realized that hypertrophy and weight loss wasn't my gig. I wanted to help people who were in pain, because I had experienced that for 20 years. So it's been a pretty cool journey to come this far. And so, like, it's been funny. how long have we been in the industry and not come across each other yet? I've seen and heard and read and listened, and Rodney Corn, who's my co-founder of Feel Soman, knows you really, really well, and Rodney speaks so highly of you. And Rodney and I've traveled the world for 20 years, so it was a bit like Tom Myers. Tom Myers and I met in 2008. We did a workshop in 2016 in Sydney, and it was kind of funny because it's like we'd known each other all our lives,
Yeah, I
right?
mean that's yeah, because we're made of the same cloth. I mean, I think that
Correct.
it
Yeah.
is interesting to me the people who come to fascia and
Yeah.
somehow fascia becomes a connecting thing. It really is what sort of connects the thread of
Yeah.
these great people. And it is crazy. I mean, I really, after I talked to you, I was like, how is it possible that we have never met
Yeah.
before that moment? It really was kind of crazy. I
See,
got,
once again, Sue, therein lies the reason why we seem to be drawn, because that's fascia. It's erratic, it's unknown, and things just pop up through the experience of working with it that you just don't expect.
well, that's it. You know, fascia is really at the heart of everything that you do. So I want to know, how has your understanding of fascia evolved over the years? Because you don't come to the place where you are suddenly, it's an evolution.
It's an evolution. Look, as I said, my dad was a horse person. I called him a horse listener. My brothers, I've got my number four brother's the largest horseshoe manufacturer in Australasia, sold his business 20 years ago. Horses and humans are very similar. So it was interesting because Carl, my number four brother, used to do a lot of research on the horses. Once again, not an educated person, um, but just very practical, very observant. And it was interesting because what we were finding is in a horse's leg from the knee down, and a horse's leg is half the width of my arm, there's no muscles, it's just fascia, it's just tendon and it's fluid. And you go, okay, so you're taking 600 kgs of force downwards with 9.81 meters per second of force, and you're pushing up with twice the amount of force from the ground. This stuff's pretty strong. This stuff's pretty adaptable. This stuff's pretty important. We better take notice of it. So that was where we spent hours with racehorses with tendon problems that we had to try and heal. So I've never done a massage course. I'm a body worker, and I'm a body worker through what I learnt basically off the horses. But Dad taught me, and my brothers taught me that, so you have to observe. You have to have the humility to not know. You have to have the humility to ask and to be taught from the person or the animal in front of you, right? And if you can connect, that's really simple. But the trouble we have is, this thing now that there's so much knowledge out there on the internet, and there has been for a number of years, but there's so much knowledge that knowledge is power, but application is king.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's where it's the beauty of, okay, how do you get to where I've got to? Well, firstly, the horses sort of pushed me in that path without even knowing. Having one eye, I just thought everyone saw how I saw. I really did. I played sport at the top level with one eye, so no, you're blind on the right side. You had to adapt. I had to go from being a natural right footer to becoming a natural left footer. So all these things about tissue adaptation. I went down to the high level and I had chronic groin pain, and they were telling me that my adductors were tight. I've since worked out that I was probably hypertonic in the pelvic floor because of the emotional fear of failing, right? But these things weren't even a discussion 35 years ago. And so therefore you go through your career of playing sport and having the injuries, and I was a perfect athlete. I did everything you asked me. I trained 6 days a week, so I was stupid. No recovery, no rest, because that's not how we train our horses. Our horses would have recovery, right? And the more recovery you gave them, the better they went. The happier the horse, the better they went. The way their coat glistened, the way that their skin told us that they were hydrated, nutritioned well. They were happy. They were in a good space. All these things that we were taught along the way sort of got forgotten by a lot of people about using the skills that we have in our being.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really big point there. I almost literally lost my head about maybe 4 years ago when I saw something, I think it was in the New York Times, where it said the new craze in fitness, recovery. I was like, Really? Is that a new idea? I'm confused as to what you mean. It makes no sense to me. But, I want to go back because, losing an eye and the way that the nervous system operates, our eyes are how we cleanse our blood. It's where we take so much information in. And isn't it amazing that we have this tiny little pinhole that takes information in upside down, by the way, in a tiny little way, and then our brain reads it, and we now see what we see in the world.
And reorganizes it in a frame that we can understand, right? So,
I mean, that's amazing, right?
but
But it's amazing to me that when you lose an eye, your nervous system has to adopt new behaviors. And so I think that the way I would think of fascia is this system that is trying to stabilize, support, and protect the body and allow communication from the nervous system to move freely through the body. And now 50% of that information that you're taking in is now reprogramming at such a young age. Your mind has actually reshaped the way it sees the world. And I find that so incredible about the body that we have this ability to compensate and adapt.
and I guess that's one thing that, the reason I condition people, I move people the way I do is because I know tissue can adapt because I've experienced it, right?
Yeah.
Don't tell me that you can't do this or you can't do that. I mean, it's a bit like we talk about reconditioning the body. People call it rehabilitating. I call it reconditioning because no one likes rehabilitation. It's boring. But
Right.
if you're going to recondition the body to now prepare it to be able to cope with life, so you take, what do they say? The research says that it's 400 to 600 synapses, repetitions of the muscle to get the muscle that's been damaged to work, right? So I took play to the States in 2006 and people laughed at me. And there
Mm.
was no research about it. I just got bored with going to the gym and doing stupid stuff that was hurting me. So I started to use play as my main programming system. 2009, Dr. Stuart Brown comes out and says that 90% of people, of felons in the US who have created major catastrophes like murder and rape and so forth, have never played. So all of a sudden, play from 2009 started to become very serious. But the interesting thing about play is I can recondition tissues to move in the pattern they're designed to 10 to 20 times in repetitions rather than 400 to 600 repetitions. Like,
Exactly.
that's just, and you think, well, how's that possible? One, it's
Yeah.
enjoyable. Two, fascia wants variation, variability, variety. It doesn't want repetition. The brain's that smart that it doesn't need 400 to 600 times to make something wake the brain up. We've just got to get smarter at how we reconnect the amazing brilliance of the body. And, it's far smarter than us. And why we start to think that we're smarter than, I've got no idea.
Oh, yeah, I don't even understand it myself. And you said something very important as a body worker. I think probably one of the biggest skills that you get is to stop feeling like you're in charge to fix somebody and to listen and to watch and observe and then offer some feedback and try to then, how you're saying, sort of reprogram. And I think that there's a change in adaptation to free you up from feeling stuck, from feeling like you can't get somewhere. So I would ask you, what do you think is maybe one of the biggest misconceptions that you see people have, because fascia is now oh so popular? I always say everybody's a myofascial expert. I hear people throwing that word around like it's candy. And I'm like, do you even know what you're talking about? Do you really? Is that really a myofascial technique? That looks like the same kettlebell swing that you were doing 10 years ago. I don't know
Correct.
why that's fascia or why you're saying that word, but fascia is very fashionable now. So what do you think is a big misconception about it that you'd like to reveal to people?
I think people have got to understand that they've got to understand the movement continuum. And it's interesting because Rodney and I have discussed this for hours and hours and hours. I remember one night we're sitting in China and we're talking about, people just don't get the conditioning of fascia because, you know, Michelle Delcourt and Tom put it beautifully when they say that, you look at muscles and muscles are the engine of the body, that we build these beautiful muscles and they're big and they're strong. Fascia is now the chassis. If you don't build the chassis, the muscles can't perform. And it's so, so true. But the trouble is, people still don't understand the movement continuum. If I want to reset, if I want to remodel fascia in movement, I can't give it speed and force, because if I do, it stiffens. And that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to stiffen so we can, mitigate stress. It's beautiful.
Explode, yes, move
Explode.
fast. Yeah.
But if I take my skin and if I had, did a burn, or I twisted the skin in opposite directions, and if I forced it, it stiffens, right? But as soon as I take my skin now and take the speed and force out, now my skin can actually move so much further. So I've now got a chance of remodeling or reshaping or resetting the fuses, the fascia that have blown through the stress that we've been under. So the movement continuum of fascia is super important, that if you can't breathe, you can't move. If you can't move, you can't load. You can load, you'll break.
Mhm.
And that's what's really interesting. You see these guys who, they've come to me, and as you said, I'm seeing people who are doing myofascial training now that, that was the same as it was 10 years ago. And they're still doing the same movements. They're still lifting, or they're still, but they're all traditional movements. They're all single plane traditional movements. There's no multi-direction, there's no variety, there's no variation. You sort of think, guys, fascia's far smarter than that. You've got to give it what it needs so that it can actually help you be the best person they can be.
Yeah, I love that idea. And I always think, when people are referring to fascia, I always ask them, what fascia? You have to put something in front of fascia. Is it neurofascia? Is it visceral fascia, superficial fascia? You're talking about deep fascia, the myofascia. Like, what exactly are you talking about? And with, you had maybe mentioned it a little earlier when you said, when you lost your eye, there really is an emotional component of that. I mean, it's, anytime somebody loses, like I have a friend who lost the tip of his finger working, in construction, and he was
Yeah.
like, I dismembered myself. And I was like, well, I know that's got to be so hard when you lose a piece of your physical
Mm.
being, and then you get picked on, and the kids, and, they can be very cruel. And so there's a lot of emotional holding it. So I want you to talk a little bit about, because, you talk about emotion and movement, they're very deeply connected in your work. So how do you think fascia holds emotional trauma, and how do you help people to release it?
Ooh, wow, I'm just taking a deep breath there, Sue, because that's a big, big area. Okay, so once again, so I'm not the person who reads a million books, and I'm not, because of the fact I will listen to people I respect in the industry on a podcast. I'm a better listener than I am a reader, and just purely because my brain gets creative when I start to read. So it's interesting because what I have learned personally is we've come from an era that has to suppress. We've come from an era that cannot show, tears, and we can't, hug, and things are changing now. But I'm from, a family that shook hands, and that's all they did. I kissed my dad till I was about probably 13 or 14, gave him a hug, but once that stopped, it stopped, which is not me. I still hug my kids now. I've got, kids that are 30, 28, 23, and 11. So it's something that, when you have an emotional storage component, we have to be firstly aware that we've got it. And secondly, we've got to understand, okay, so what's storing it? Where is it? And from the body work, Sue, what I've found is that anytime that I've worked on the bony sections of a human being, and you get them to breathe, and you get them to park their mind, just to suspend their thoughts and allow them to actually feel what I'm doing in those bony sections. Now, what's interesting about that is bone has one of the most abundant mechanoreceptors both inside it and outside it, as we know. But funny part is, not many people seem to take notice of Robert Schlepp's science back in 2003, or research back in 2003. And that interstitial receptor that's an abundant through the body, if we stimulate that, it actually creates the vasodilation that we need, right? Which is, now we're getting into this beautiful, I can actually reset I can allow blood flow. I can allow more oxygen. I can allow more nutrients. I can lower the blood, I can lower the blood heart rate. I can grab the waste nutrients in the blood, and I can reset the autonomic nervous system. But more importantly, you create extravasation. You can actually now take plasma from the blood vessels and start to bleed it back into the fascial system, which changes the viscosity of the fascial system.
Mm.
So all
Interesting.
of a sudden, this stuff that we call fascia, as you said, whatever that is, what type of fascia, I don't know. Um, this stuff can be changed by simply getting the bones to move, the fascia to move, the storage unit to actually relax, and the trauma to now start to freely move and not necessarily be judged by the person who's actually feeling it, but to actually just acknowledge it and let it go.
Yeah.
And that can be done from a body worker's perspective, from a roller's perspective, from a percussion on a bone. I use small guns with percussion on the bone to see the emotional state of someone's face. Because everyone says to me, and I traveled the world, Sue, with some of the best trying to learn their assessments for 7 years. Like when I was working with Richard, who you met back at Ursa as well. Richard's the most connected person I've ever met in the world. And he's just lovely. He's just the loveliest guy. And it was interesting because I saw these guys do amazing things with their assessments, but I couldn't see it. So I thought, you know what? I said to Rich, I'm going to create an appraisal that allows people to feel. And if we can get them to feel, now that empowers them. Now they take control of their body. No different to melt method. Get on the roller, let the roller tell you what your body's feeling that you can't feel. And if you can do that, now you become more aware of not necessarily the problem, but certainly the issue that is adding to the problem. So if you've got areas that are traumatized, that have hung on, and it hasn't even got to be a physical trauma like a sporting injury or sexual abuse or anything like that. It's more the emotional trauma of your feeling being suppressed. And I don't want that to be confused with your thoughts because I know they're connected. How did you feel? We take the heart 8 times electromagnetically stronger than the brain. We take the gut 100 million neurons, 10 times more ascending pathways than there is descending. If we don't listen to those two, I can tell you right now, a horse doesn't feel you when you walk in the yard. It doesn't feel your brain. It feels your heart and it feels your gut.
That's right.
And
I
the
think
people
all
are no
animals
different.
do.
Of
And
course
I
they
think,
do.
yeah, I think that's it. Is I think I really saw it more, or I became more aware of it, I guess, when COVID happened, how completely despondent people got. It was almost like, you'd want to hug somebody and you saw them like, oh, we can't do that anymore, or we can't shake each other's hands. And I just wanted to lick their face or something. I was like, are you kidding? That we can't hug one another anymore. Do you realize what people are saying? Like, this is brainwashing. Of course we need touch. And that is and I say that a lot in class. I'm like, you know what, we need to touch ourselves more. And I mean that in every possible way. We really do. We should touch one another, we should touch ourselves. And I think that a lot of people are brought up in a way where, I just think of myself and asking my mom one day when I had a mirror looking at my vagina, and I was like, "What is that?" And she goes, "Don't touch that. Don't touch that. And don't ever let anybody else touch that." And I actually, in my mind, I thought, it kind of looks like a mouth. Maybe it will bite my finger off. And I remember maybe 6 months later telling that to my babysitter, and she was like, "What? Come here." And she like brought me into the bathroom and like explained where my clitoris was, and like what was I looking at. And she's
See?
like, explained what it was about. And I was really mad at my mom afterwards, coming back to her saying, you're wrong, like that thing's not such a bad region. And but I think that's it, is we're infiltrated with information that really causes emotional distress in the future. It gives you fear and worry to never let anybody touch you, or people are going to take from you. And I think it shapes us in a way where we lose that sense of touch for ourselves. And whether it's melt or movement or stretching, I think that having your body touched in in a way that's actually not even from your hands, I think is
And
very valuable. And one of the things I really like about you talk about movement as a conversation rather than a prescription. So I want you to kind of expand on that idea and how people can start listening to their bodies more effectively.
I'm a little bit concerned at this stage. They're listening to this. Your listeners are listening to this podcast, thinking, "So we're listening to a one-eyed Australian who's now talking about a conversation with his body." Yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm going to finish
I
this
love
podcast.
it. Give it to me, Ian. I love it. These are the podcasts I live for.
So the biggest thing for me, and you just said it beautifully, in the fact of our parents want to help us as best they can with the knowledge that they have. And I can remember my dad saying, way back before I was born, there was a doctor that used to come around and he dressed in a leather coat 12 months of the year. Now, where I was from was not like Florida, it was flat, but it was 40 plus, so it's 110 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer, but it's -3 or 4 in the winter. And it was flat, right? Flat as far as you could see. And he would wear this leather full length jacket all year round because he believed whatever was inside you stayed inside you. And I said to Dad, that sort of doesn't make sense to me. Like, I'm not really buying it, right? Anyway, he was the family
That's
doctor
so
for
real.
many years, but that's the belief of the faith they had in their doctors and priests and all that sort of stuff. So it's interesting because you come back now to this trust factor. And trust with any animal is not about words, it's about the feeling, the movement, the presence. And the biggest thing that I believe we've had stripped off us because of science, research, and education, by people knowing but not being able to apply, is they've taken away our feeling.
Mhm.
They've taken away permission for us to connect to us. So when I talk about, and so this can be a kid with a learning disability who's 10, this can be an Olympic athlete, this can be anyone in between, this can be a corporate, a mum and dad. Because when I talk about performance, I'm talking about a mother who's 2 weeks postpartum, who's got relaxin in her system, so her body's like a bendy band. She's got no pelvic floor activation. She's sleep deprived. She can't breathe. And now she's got to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, bend over a cot, pick up a baby, and not blow a disc.
Right.
And then she's got the social media saying she should have the body she had before she had the baby. Like, come on. This is what worries me. We're not listening to us, we're listening to all this noise, right?
And
So
everything is AI, by the way. All those visuals you're seeing aren't even true. Anyway.
everything is AI, correct. So you have this scenario now where, for me, I used to get people to do what I call a sit and reach. Now, you can imagine in your mind someone sitting into a chair, but what they're going to do is they're going to reach forward with their arms. So it's just a sit and reach, and you only sit and reach to where you feel the first tension. Now, I was in Hong Kong last week, and of course, they all squat over there like you wouldn't believe. And I said, now, let's define something before we move. A squat, do I use them? Yes, I do. But what is a squat? It's an egotistical demand from the brain for the body to take an action. I don't want you to squat. I want you to sit and reach. A sit and reach is a humility action that allows you to slow and feel what your biofeedback system is doing. Now, they looked to me as if I had no eyes, no brains, no nothing. But it was really interesting. So when I got them to do it freehand with no support, they didn't know where to go because they didn't know what to feel. They didn't know what to listen to. So I use a stick. I use just an orange stick. You've seen stick mobility. I've got some of those that I use. And it's great because it means your hands are at chest height. I have their feet looking forward, and I get them to take a 4-second breath in that allows them to now slow their movement down. And I get them to stop where they feel the first tension and then come back home. Now, the interesting thing from that is, Sue, is you go, okay, so it's a stick and it's a sit and reach and it's breath. So why would that be important? Well,
Mm.
if I grab the stick, I've got a reference point for my hand. So therefore my T-spine can't go forward. I can't just hinge at the hips like most people do. If I have my feet looking forward now, my big toe, little toe, heel are all in connection. They're all activated. As soon as I breathe in and I start to descend and I get to the bottom of that 4 seconds, my pelvic floor is down, my diaphragm is down. So now I've loaded as much breath into my system as I can. So when I come in against gravity and ground force, I'm actually going to bring my pelvic floor, bring my diaphragm, get my cardiac, my perineum of my heart and lungs to activate. My tongue's going to activate. The most important thing is my big toe's going to activate. So now
Yeah.
I've got a natural arch. I've got this beautiful corset around my trunk, which we call the core. And we've got this heart, lung, tongue coordination, and we've got this sequence of beautiful flow. Now, tell me where you feel the tension.
Yeah.
It's
I
simple,
feel great.
right? It's
Yeah.
simple. It's
Yeah.
just let's just slow people down. Let's bring people back to people. Let's because if I can get them to feel that, if I can get them to feel tension, then I can take the emotion and we can shift it. I don't fix anyone. I've never fixed anyone.
Yeah, and that's it. I think, and you've said this a bunch of times, and this is where you and I align absolutely perfectly. And I always say I get very southern when I talk about taking care because you've got to slow down. We're working too hard, we're moving too fast. You got to slow it down a minute. And that's it, is like we're so in a rush to get to something, right? To fix something, and when people are in pain, I get it. Like they just want an instant fix. But most of the time, their pain has been either there for a long time or they've been building this pain point for a long time. They have terrible patterns that they have had for a lifetime. And they think, oh, yeah, you're going to come in here and one session with me and you're going to be fine. And every once in a while, you hit that, like you get somebody who comes in and you're like, oh, well, let's just try to this. And then suddenly they stand up and they're like,
But
I
if you
feel
just
better. Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
but
yeah, I
but
know.
half of it is just slow down. And slowing down has a lot to do with frequency. It has a lot to do with flow. It has a lot to do with how you transfer your own energy from cell to cell because our cells are listening. And I see in the background you have the power plate. We actually have a new device coming
Nice.
out, which is a low frequency vibration device that has 40, 70, and 90 hertz to help people again slow down, but to help that mechanical force transduction to fire in a very gentle and passive way. So seeing that you've got this, what role do you think vibration plays in fascial health, and do you see it as a missing link in traditional movement practices?
Absolutely, I do. Look, so it's interesting. There's all sorts of vibration, right? So we would say if I use power plate, it's a multi-directional um, vibration that the body loves because it's harmonic vibration. If I used cycloid vibration, which is still multi-directional, but it hasn't got force. So the beautiful thing is there's two multi-directional types of vibrations that don't have force. Most of the products that we have are very one directional, but they're really important, and they're important for a lot of reasons. The major reason is fluid flow. So when I look at the body and you go, okay, so you've got nerve, muscle, you've got fascia and skin, 70% water. And then you've got bone, which is 30% water. I'll argue it's 50% water in situ. Then you've got blood and lymph, 92, 96% water. Without the two over here, these five over here don't cut it. Right? So if we haven't got fluid flow, then we have a problem because now we haven't got the ability for the tissues to be healthy to actually transmit mechanotransduction, to transmit the communication, to transmit the frequency of peacefulness.
Mhm.
So all we're trying to do is to take people out of this sympathetic response into this parasympathetic response. So if we can take a product that vibrates and we place it on the vagal nerve. Now it's kind of interesting, right? We talk about the sternum. I talk about that a lot because people sort of seem to miss the big key issue here. Is that we talk about the vagal nerve. It's become like fascia. It's become very sexy,
Mhm.
and but the trouble is it comes out of the base of the cranium around the throat, down into the clavicle junction, down where the collarbones meet. Now, the vagal nerve wraps around the esophagus and runs down to the left side of the heart and then runs down into the gut. Now, if that esophagus can't move up and down, and it's encased in, yes, you guessed it, fascia, if that esophagus can't move, I'm going to have a problem now with potentially shoulder pain, neck pain. Now, what I'm finding in a lot of people that I'm working on is that a lot of the females have almost got a false cleavage, and the men have got this almost a false cleavage too, because they're building their pecs and shoulders and so forth. But the tissue through here can't move. Now, and they're almost, the shoulders have come forward, the head's forward, they've got brain fog, they're moody, they can't seem to have the shape that they want, they're not, upright. Anyway. So you take something that vibrates and you stimulate the sternum, you stimulate the clavicle, you stimulate the neck, you can stimulate any bony structure because you're going to create vasodilation, which is a relaxation of the nervous system,
Mhm.
as well as many other things.
Capillary density, all this explosion.
Oh my goodness, it goes on, right?
Right.
But the beautiful thing about it, Sue, is these are all solutions. These aren't quick fixes. If you do this, the body will turn around reasonably quickly.
Yeah.
And I love what you said before, that people who have come in pain, unless we can identify what's caused the pain, then we can't really solve the problem, because we need to be able to now be able to not repeat that pattern. Because if we repeat the
Yes.
pattern, we're idiots, right? We're just
That's it.
idiots. We're done.
Yeah.
So, people say to me, I give them a fascial mobilizer and I go, oh, how long will this last? This will last as long as you don't repeat the dumb pattern that you've been doing.
Good luck.
Good luck with that, right? So if we can make it a ritual, if we can do the breath, we can do the movement, your body's going to just bounce out of it like that. So it's interesting because it's understanding that we've got these amazing tools now, but it's a different perspective. It's not just a perspective of just going after the neural system. It's not just going after the fascial system. It's not just going after the skeletal system. They're all systems that work together. And if we understand the commonality in them, and fluid's a big commonality,
Fluid
right?
flow. Yeah.
If we can get fluid flow, we've got this amazing ability for these tissues now to adapt to force, to adapt to position, to adapt to environments, and they don't get stressed, because really what we're talking about is stress. Is
That's
it
it.
you stress? It's happy and loving and happy and everyone's, the body's feeling great, or is it distress?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, you're saying so many big things, and interestingly, I said I'm just shot all these videos, and one of the big things that I in the getting started section of self-care is I said, first of all, a lot of people get into fitness because actually they're coming from a reactive state. They don't like what they see in the mirror. They don't like themselves. And all these things. And so they're doing things for like the monkey mind in their bodies, but they're really not doing something for the very vessel that carries them through life, to really honor that we are a spirit occupying a body and using a mind to have a human experience. And for all the time that our body works for us, you would think that we would at least spend 10 minutes a day just attuning ourselves to the reality that we are in a physical form. We're in a vessel, and you need to care for that vessel, because when it's not working right, most of the time, we're the cause of it. We did
Right.
it to ourselves, And when I work with a lot of clients, I think what really is the shift is the mindset changes on the why. They realize, like, why are you lifting such heavy weights? Well, I want to be big and strong, but why? Well, because like I want chicks to like me or whatever. It's like, okay, back it up, right? So like, why would being big make women like you more, right? And then you get into this real deep place of self that has a very childlike quality to it, that has something very where they're speaking from here instead of here. And I think that really, if you do want to transform, you've got to get out of your mind and get into your body to get yourself out of the problem that you have. You're never going to do it by being smart. And again, all these people who are so smart about analysis and bodies, and oh, now we're using AI and that's going to tell you what the problem is, and it's going to size you up and tell you exactly where your squat is. And I'm like, when did we ever get so out of our bodies to actually rely on something else to tell us how we're feeling? And you integrate this somatic intelligence, which is this body intelligence, with this high performance movement. So how, I mean, you're already saying how it shifts the way that we train athletes versus rehabilitate injuries, but talk a little bit about that.
Anytime, you know, let me step back here. And it's funny, I'm looking at a gift that was given to me by an athlete just as we speak. So 2004, I had two girls who were trying out for the Olympics, for the Australian Olympic team, right? One girl that I was heavily involved with was 35 seconds behind the world record holder, who was another Australian girl. And we had 9 months to get her ready for the Olympics. The other girl was already a world champion. And it's interesting because she rode in quad and won a world championship, but she wanted to come back and have a go, singles, doubles, whatever it may have been. So the first girl, Meg, she misses on Olympic selection by 1 second. Hannah, I know. So she's improved 34 seconds, cut down to 1 second. We just ran out of time. Hannah has an anaphylactic shock and doesn't complete the trials. So anyway, a week later, Meg goes down to the state championships, beats the girl who gets picked in the Australian team by about 3 seconds. They put her in the World Cup. She gets taken to a major organisation in Australia that we all have. We all have facilities that they go to for the Olympics to train. 5 girls blew 5 discs in 5 weeks.
Oh my
Right?
gosh.
You talk about not listening to the body. So anyway, Meg went away, rode in the Australian Championship, was getting an hour and a half of physio a day just to get in and out of the boat. She comes back, never rode again. Hannah turns up in 2008 and says to me, "OD, I just want to row." I said, "All right." I'm thinking she just wants to row with the oldies and going to coach the oldies, sort of thing. Anyway, so we cut her program in half that she got from the major organisation. And it was interesting because 2009 she wins the Queensland title, 2009 she wins the New South Wales title, so she's back serious, right? 2010, the thing I'm looking at, there's a rowing suit with a medal and the photos of her winning the World Cup in Lucerne in Switzerland. So then she goes to the Olympics in 2012. So she finishes 5th in the final, which is an amazing effort. The point of the story is this, is that all the way through, and we met up about 6 weeks ago, and she's still involved with the AIS, the major organisation in Australia. And she said 20 years on, they still don't do any priming, preparatory work before an event. And you go, okay, so the conditioning programming is not about listening to what the body's feeling and doing, it's about just doing. So that's nothing, that's not heart, that's not gut, that's brain, right? So what I've got to be able to say to someone is, if you can't run slow, you can't run fast. If you can't maintain a position slow, how can I now expect you to be able to breathe and put load through your system? Because you're not going to be able to do it. So getting someone to be able to feel a pattern. And so all I've got is, I've basically got 5 patterns that I put people through. And if they can feel in those patterns what the body's doing, and then I can start to add a little bit more, and that's where play comes in, because I can take, for instance, if I've got a surfer, and a surfer comes in, and my studio is pretty straightforward. It's just a couple of plates, it's got some sand bells, some dumbbells, some bands. It's pretty straightforward. I'll actually get a sand bell out for them, because a sand bell is made of neoprene and filled full of sand. So a surfer feels really comfortable using it, right? But I might start throwing it in different directions. I might start getting them to use it in a vertical or in a diagonal direction. they feel comfortable, right? And the conversation as you're doing it now changes the whole process of what this brain focused exercise is to a natural subconscious focused exercise, because it's the subconscious I'm looking for under pressure to make the best decisions. If they can't breathe, they won't make the best decisions. If they can't move, they won't make the best decisions. And especially if I load them now, they're going to be under stress. So their sympathetic nervous system is going to kick in and their performance is going to be crap. So it really has to get back. How do I create this semantic, beautiful, listen, relationship, talk to the body? It's pretty simple. Firstly, I want to know what the client's aspiration, not goal, aspiration. Why? Because aspirations can evolve and change. Goals can't. Secondly, I want to know, what do they enjoy in their sport? And I want to bring that back into what their program looks like. Because I mean, I had the girls and I was told they had to do 1,000 squats a week in their program. Now, we did zero. And the reason we did zero was because they did 1,000 squats in the boat every morning rowing before they came into me.
Right.
Like, this is because everyone
It
talks
makes
about
sense.
load, but they don't understand what load is, right? Do I lift? No, not traditionally. I lift three-dimensionally. And I move better now than I probably moved when I was 30. Doesn't make me right, doesn't make me wrong, makes me want to live the best quality of life as I can in this vessel.
Well said. Well said. I mean, that's it. I get it. We want to look a particular way, but how long are you going to be in that body? 50 years or 100 years? And we're living longer, but nobody said anything about better longer. And I think that a lot of people are really worse off earlier on than I've ever seen in the history of me working. Like I've worked on teenagers where their bodies are like a 50-year-old or a 70-year-old. I'm like, you're terrible. And with all of the glyphosates in our foods and all of the junk that's there, we're really setting people up for damage, and we're pushing them too hard. I think even with athletes, I'm like, well, you got to push hard, and I think maybe if we push them right instead of hard, you might actually get better performance and get more joy out of the performance. And I think when people are really in love with the sport that they do, they love the competitive nature of it. They love the actual experience of it. Those are always the best athletes. The ones that are in the gym, focused all the time, all the time. I think those are the ones that get injured more often than the ones that
Yeah.
kind of find some sort of a fine balance.
And so they get broken emotionally. So therefore, quite often they fall out of the sport. And you think,
Yeah.
wow, that's cruel, right? I've got a young guy here who I've looked after. He's the same age as my youngest son. They played footy against each other. And he's going to be a chiropractor, right? But he wants to be a chiropractor utilizing my techniques, my philosophy, whatever. And he's 23. And some of the conversations we have now, and he's leaving the state of Queensland to go to the state of South Australia because the Chiropractic Association looks at the environmental human being, not just the bodily human being.
Mm, nice.
Now, how beautiful is that? Now, to have some of this awareness that he has at 23, I didn't get into this industry until I was 38. And I didn't probably have this understanding until I was probably 48. So at 23, to have this beautiful wisdom, this openness, this understanding, this feeling is just amazing. That's what excites me. So you know, I had a chiropractor in yesterday and she was just a delight in the fact of open, just open, right? And because we all know a lot of allied health professionals and they can be very, very good, but they can be very closed. And what it does for me is because we've all had this feeling that because we're different, because we bring the opportunity for the person to become empowered using tools or whatever it may be, or movement or whatever it may be, that is a threat to a lot of businesses because we're giving people permission to have freedom, not to rely on us. And that's something, in a small town that I'm in, of 50,000 people, for 25 years, you were being judged by other allied health professionals because you could do things that potentially they didn't like. But at the end of the day, it's crazy, right? Because it's about
It
the
is
human being.
crazy.
You.
It's the same thing as a lot of body workers. They get really worried. Like even, again, I have this method of melt and it's like, it's self-care. And my whole approach when I was really working on tons and tons and tons and tons of people every day was how quick could I get them out of my office and get back into active living? You're like, get out of my office. I don't want you as a permanent fixture in my office. And that was very different than a lot of the other therapists where it's like scarcity and they're worried about losing their client. And so they want to make sure that their client has to keep coming back. And I think that just sounds backwards to me. I mean, wouldn't we want to empower them with tools and knowledge so that they could care for themselves? And I would wonder because you've worked with countless people with pain and dysfunction. So what are some of the common mistakes people make when addressing chronic pain and how can they shift their perspective?
I think the first thing is don't tell them. You've got no idea of their social being. You've got no idea of their emotional being. You've got no idea of their spiritual being. You've got no idea how they sleep, how they eat, how they exercise, of their mood. You've got no idea of their relationship. How can you tell them that this is the reason they're in pain? My first question is, what do you think's causing the pain?
Mm.
And we walk them back through that process because then if we can get them just to feel, okay, so if it happened about 2 years ago, what happened 2 years ago in your life that really you felt made an impact then? And you might start, 6 months ago, and all of a sudden you walk back and then bang. And you can just see their color change or their face change or their breath change. And it's like, they've got it.
Right.
So the very first thing about treating a chronic pain person is don't tell. Please don't tell because we don't know. How about we just ask? And then when we can ask, and I don't want to know the nitty gritty. I don't want to know the ins and outs. What I want to know is, okay, if that's what happened then, can we change some events post that? Can we change your patterns post that? Because I'll guarantee that since that you actually butt grip or you back grip or you don't breathe or whatever, can we change that? And if we can, how does that feel for you?
Yeah,
Because all of
beautiful.
us,
That's it. I think we get so hung up in our story and really we need to change the story. And I think that's it is coming to that place where you realize that you're in a story that you've told yourself for a really long time. And there's so much underpinning chronic issues that once you do a little digging, I think the person has to be ready to sort of face their story. And that's
yeah,
really where transformation happens. So one more idea here before I go to my last question for you. You've pioneered some really powerful movement strategies with Odon Movement and Feel Soma. What has inspired your promote or your approach to it? Like where do you see it evolving in the next, let's say, decade?
what inspired me was the lack of results that I was getting, Sue. No different to you. You know, there's a reason you ask questions and there's a reason you challenge the norm because you're not getting results. And constantly I'm told people come in and I'm told they've got this and they've got that, and you go, well, hang on, that's all very well. You might have degenerated this or you might have perforated that, but you've still got to go to the toilet. You've still got to get into the car. You've still got to be able to hang the washing out, haven't you? So whether you've got that or not, haven't we actually got to still be able to move? So it's interesting because once again, when you give them permission to stop and ponder that question, it's very powerful because it's like, well, yeah. So if someone's telling you, you've got a back complaint, don't rotate, they're not saying don't rotate at the hips, they're saying don't rotate in the lower back. So if we get you to rotate your hips, you're going to take the pain away from your lower back. Ah, really? Yeah, do this, try this. Oh, that feels better. So it's that whole process, right? We let the brain let them tell us. So the brain then says, "Well, don't rotate, don't move, don't move." So you're in a
Right.
situation where
Yeah. This is why people who come to me with osteoporosis and when they say, "Oh, my doctor said that I can't flex my spine," and I'm like, "How are you gonna take a poop?" And they're like, "What?" I was like, do you sit on a toilet? And they're like, yeah. And I go, what happens to your spine when you sit on a toilet? You go into flexion. You can't pick up your shoes anymore. You can't drive your car.
Like, get your stuff out of the boot of the
Yeah,
car. You
like what do you mean? Like you just your doctor said don't flex your spine. I was like, I need to talk to your doctor because that is really messed up. Like you are setting a person up to have a more osteoporotic potential cracking body instead of how about we move into a little bit of flexion and extension? Why don't we try some
beautiful.
side bending? Why don't we just get tiny about things and see if tiny gets a little bigger over time? Isn't that a mind blow, you know? I don't know.
And
People
so
are people are guided wrong.
but there's your movement continuum, right? So your movement continuum is, well, I can't squat because I've got back pain. Okay, well, how about we do a sit and reach, and we do a sit and reach three-dimensionally, and now we start to do a couple of reaches, and then all of a sudden we come back to a squat position. Oh, that feels easier. Like, you're right. How about we just regress the movement? But I feel the hardest part for our industry, and I'm going to say our, whether you call it wellness, whether you call it movement, whether you call it fitness, I don't know what
Right.
industry we're in.
Whatever we're calling it these days.
But people don't know how to regress. They don't know how to regress movements or regress tension so that they can do something without being in severe pain. You know, don't get on the roller, don't get in a percussion gun, don't get on a vibration plate and turn it on flat out and then go, well, that's hurting. How about we breathe and listen to what the biofeedback says?
Right.
So,
Yes, you're
you
right.
know,
We need to back it up. Back it up a
we need
little.
to back it up. And that's, 9 times out of 10, back it up, slow it down. It's all pretty straightforward. And it sounds so easy, and it is, but you've got to practice it, right, sir? You've got to practice it. If there's a foam roller in the corner of your building, don't leave it in the corner. Put it beside your chair. Put it beside your TV. Put it beside somewhere where you're going to see it. So it says, okay, just do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's it is the consistency I think for people is really tough. When I ask clients who have been really bad emotional state, they're very depressed, they're angry, whatever, and I'll ask them something simple like, when was the last time you just like walked and put your feet on grass, or you just got out into nature and hugged a tree, or you sat near a lake and just looked out at the lake and breathed. And people would be like, I don't know, maybe like last summer, maybe I went out, and I think to myself, last summer, you know, a year ago? Like, what, are you serious? And so we've gotten so far away from nature. I think we get so far away from joy and bliss that we can't really have fun or play anymore because we're so needing to have our social status and how many friends liked my post or whatever it is. It's like, gosh, I just put it out there and just let people have their way with it and just love yourself, people, because that's really where peace comes from is
Yeah.
start with loving thyself and trusting thyself, right?
It's hardest part, Sue, is that loving thyself, right? Because it's easier to love yourself. You've actually got to sit with your own truth.
Yeah.
Now, to sit in that pain, sometimes people struggle, and that's okay. But even if they practice doing that 5 minutes a day, and I don't mean sitting back, looking back at what they've done and saying, oh, I wish I'd never said that, or wish I'd never done, because that just drives into depression. I mean, the only thing you can change is now, in this moment. But just be aware that you've done that. It's caused an emotional feeling. So the way to change that is, I'm not going to do it again. Just be aware of it. So,
Yeah.
we're pretty simple people, really, you and I, aren't we?
We really are. So Ian, I want you to answer. I ask everybody on Anatomical Gangster the same question. I'm going to pose it to you. If you could tell somebody something that you've learned, a life lesson, something that really changed the way that you were seeing the world, and it completely changed your perspective on life itself, and maybe if they heard it, it would set them straight and maybe change the course of their life, what would it be?
Listen to your heart and gut. Don't question it. Simple.
That's
They
so
never lie.
That's for sure. Anytime I don't question, or I mean, I don't listen to my gut instincts. If I'm not listening to the intuitiveness of my heart, that's where shit gets messed up.
Bang. Shit hits the fan.
That's where it
Well,
happens. That's it. Well, how can people find out more about you if they're not down under? How are they going to find you? How are they going to connect with you?
They can just find me on feelsoma.com. They can contact me through there. There's programs, there's all sorts of things I do. If they've got questions, more than happy to answer them. So like you, it's just this is what I do for my life. This is my life. So um, there's social media outlets, but just go to feelsoma.com. That's the easiest way to find
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm telling you, maybe it's 2026,
it.
maybe 2027. I don't know. But I'm going to get to Australia and you and I are going to jam out and do something together because I just know after I met you the first time, I'm like, we just need to stand on stage and explain stuff to people. And I think the entire room would just get it. You know what I mean? So we'll
And
find
that's
our way back to one
we'll
another.
find a we'll find a time, we'll find a location, and who knows? It could be in Hong Kong. We don't know where it will be. It will be
But
somewhere around this amazing globe.
it is going to happen. Well, for all of you guys listening to this conversation, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. I hope you find Ian and think a little bit about what we've talked about today. Maybe change your story, change your mind, listen to your heart and gut, and you're going to be all right. So, as always, keep your mind open. That's where transformation happens. Keep your heart open and stay gangster. We'll see you next week.